Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video, and today we are doing a tag that, I'll be honest, I kind of took my time about this one because I really wanted to think about decks that I actually have used a lot of to give these recs. So the tag in question is called Editors Pick Decks. This was started over by Nova Mundi Tarot. And this tag is really just to give our own, whoever is doing the VR, right? Giving our actual recommendations of decks that, well, we would recommend to other people, like depending on the category. So it's our recs, right? It has to be things that we would confidently, I feel like, say, yes, I would recommend this for other people. And so that in itself is kind of challenging. And I also took my time on this because I wanted to be very intentional about what I was recommending. Was it something I actually have used a lot of, right? Is it a deck that I think can do whatever job it says? Because there's quite a few prompts on this tag. Specifically, I think there are 15. Now, of these 15, I will be honest, 3 of them I am completely skipping. And, well, maybe 2 for sure skipping. 1 I might give an honorable mention of, but I can't 100% recommend that. And the reason for just skipping certain tags or certain prompts on this tag is simply because I just don't do that work, right? I don't do that work, so I can't recommend you stuff for that. I don't know. Yeah, that wouldn't be helpful. So we're gonna kind of get right into it. The first one in this tag is Inner Child Work. Okay, so this is a deck that you would recommend for inner child healing, one that might feel safe, nurturing, and playful. And this is ideal, of course, for reconnecting with your innocence, creativity, and emotional truth. Now, I can't say I do 100% inner child work as is, but what deck I would recommend, especially after being somebody who goes, I guess now more frequently to like therapy or like class and stuff like that, I would recommend this one. This might seem an unusual choice for me, and I don't even know if you guys knew I had this deck, but this is the Little Frog's Guide to Self-Care. This is 52 affirmation cards for self-love and empowerment. And it's by Mabel Equa. I don't know how to pronounce. I hope I said that right. I'm not sure. Anyways, why would I recommend this deck? Okay, the reason why I think, because these are affirmation cards, right? The reason why I would say this is good for inner child work is because I don't know about you guys, but having these more affirmation style of cards is definitely closer in line to healing or helping my inner child, because there were just times when I was a kid where I don't know, I didn't have a lot of confidence and stuff in myself, and was building my, image of who I am, right? Getting a lot of input from the world. And unfortunately for me, a lot of it was very negative growing up. So having a deck like this, an affirmation style deck, kind of does that job for me. Okay. Oh, I'm showing this because this was cool. Inside that box that you just saw actually came this too. So basically how these decks work. So these are the backs. Their affirmations on the front, cute little froggy. Their shoes keeps changing as time goes on. But anyways, how I kind of use this deck is I shuffle it up best I can. Then like randomly pull a card. This one will say, magic always reveals itself when I'm willing to see it. And it's just a kind of a way for me, right? And it stays on the stand, and then I just leave it on my desk. But it's kind of just a way for me to reconnect with myself when I did used to believe in a lot more things before, you get jaded by life. So yeah, every card just has a nice little affirmation, the frog. By the way, sorry in advance if the lighting in here is horrible. It's like early morning, so I realize it's a little dark in here. Anyways, the reason why I recommend this deck is because I really do like the messages, especially this one. Oh my God, this is definitely like one that's very relevant to me as, just in general, and even like trying to give myself that confidence as a kid, right? It's like, look in the mirror and say, you are beautiful. That means the most coming from you. So good, right? It's just getting back to that more youthful, happier energy and time. This is why I recommend this one, because as an affirmation deck, you guys know, I'm not usually a big affirmation deck person. But for me, I don't know what is about this like silly little frog changing like their shoes and stuff. But I just really, I don't know. It just seems very tender and heals that part of myself that started to degrade, I guess, in childhood. So I don't know. This might not be an obvious choice for everyone else. And maybe not everybody has inner child work that they need to do surrounding like being more positive with themselves. But if you are someone like me who, you know, is doing that work, I would definitely recommend this little deck. So yeah, this is the Little Frog's Guide to Self-Care. Okay, next up, prompt number 2 here is Shadow Work. So a deck that's powerful for helping readers face their shadows. Honest, deep, and unafraid to confront the difficult. This is your recommendation for deep transformation and self-inquiry. Okay, this is, again, I feel like all these choices, maybe this should be the tagline of this video, is like, all these choices, of course, are subjective. It's based on my experience giving you these recommendations. But for that shadow work prompt, I would say a deck I would confidently recommend, because there's some decks I have in my collection that I feel like could also fit that space, right, of shadow work or shadow work, whatever, as we see it. But a deck I would personally recommend just based on using it, right, is this one. This is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. I've talked about this deck way too much on my channel. This is my first tarot deck. I have edged mine in this orange because it is incredibly beat up. I have a first edition first printing, so, you know, it is what it is. Anyways, why do I recommend this deck for shadow work? It's because this was my first tarot deck, and when I was first starting out tarot, okay, I had no idea about what the hell the different differentiations was of shadow work versus light work versus just normal readings, predictive, etc., right? So when I was first learning tarot, the things that I was asking tarot of were very deep and personal and, you know, very, very deep questions I was trying to get to the root of because I was not in the greatest mental health space. I wanted to get some answers that I knew were going to be unbiased, but hopefully true. And this deck really helped me out. I think the imagery, of course, plays a part of it, but just because it has darker imagery is not why I recommend it for shadow work. I think it's mainly just because of it is honest and it is deep, and it wasn't afraid to tell me the truth, even if that truth was kind of brutal at times, right? Now, this deck, from what I understand, I don't know if this is honestly true. I wish someone would actually confirm it for me. I don't know if it's just like a scary FOMO thing or not. People are saying that this deck is going to go out of print. If so, I honestly hope it isn't. Like, I don't know. I can only hope that it won't go out of print, because I do think this is a really good one. And the guidebook especially has just really good, clear messages, also helping, I guess, uncover deeper meanings and truths and all that jazz. So I really do recommend it. Now, the cardstock these days, see, I have a first edition printing. It's on the old Luang cardstock because this deck first came out in 2015. That's when I first started tarot reading. It's not on this cardstock anymore. If you try to get this deck now, it's going to be on a much glossier, stickier feeling cardstock. It's not the greatest, but either way, I'd still recommend this deck. for its artwork, just because this is a good one. So yeah, for shadow work, I highly recommend this one. And yeah, I'm going to move on to our next prompt. Okay, we are actually going to be in prompt number 5. I am skipping 3 because it's deity work, and I'll be honest with you guys, I don't do extensive deity work, so I don't have a deck to recommend for that. And I'm also skipping number 4 because I personally do not do ancestor work either. Okay, just being honest here, skipping those prompts, not doing them because I don't have Rex for that. So number 5, and as you can see, I'm kind of cheating because I have 2 decks, but for number 5, it is divination. It's a deck that excels in traditional divination, clear, direct, and accurate. This is your top pick for those seeking predictive insight or practical answers. Now, I feel like a lot of people would typically recommend either a Kipper or a Lenormand or even playing card deck for this slot. Here's the thing. I am learning a little bit of both, a little, I say very little, bit of both of Kipper and Lenormand, but I would not, because I'm like barely learning, I wouldn't recommend to you guys them with certainty because I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? I haven't done enough of them to tell you. So I am going to recommend 2 tarot decks, and yes, I am cheating. You're going to see that for a couple of these. I don't care. I don't care. Okay, these are my top recs. These are my editor's picks. You know what I mean? Who cares? For divination, there are 2 decks here that I think recently have worked really well in giving those, I guess, slightly more predictive questions or answers or trying to figure out stuff of. And it is these 2. The first is the Paulina Tarot. And the second here is the Magical Creatures Tarot. One is mass market. The other is indie. I should say too, right? The Inner Child Work and Shadow Work prompt ones were both mass market decks also, just so you know. But anyways, the reason why I'd recommend both of these, right, is because, yeah, I recently have been doing a lot of readings for coworkers, and both of these decks came from my coworkers. So let me kind of explain a little bit. We'll start with the Paulina Tarot. This is a deck by, as you can see, Paulina Fay, also known as Paulina Cassidy. This was her first tarot deck, and I was really vibing with this deck, especially in April. These are the backs. But this deck was, despite me just like, you know, vibing with it and having a good time in general and all that jazz, this deck was really good at just like, oh, some of these are in reverse. You know what? It is what it is. I think it's because my coworkers were shuffling these, so I'll flip this over. Anyways, what I was getting at. This deck was really good at giving very honest readings to my coworkers. In particular, the 2 of Cups in this deck really predicted something for one of my coworkers. I'm not going to get into it. You could probably guess by it being the 2 of Cups, though. It was a situation that was kind of awkward a little bit just because I didn't know the information prior. But, you know, tarot, it's like, haha, I don't give a shit about your feelings. And it basically just told me straight up what the situation was. And so knowing a little bit of that context helped understand his reading. But yeah, this deck was really good at giving like great insight to my coworkers. It was very honest, direct, and because it follows not 100% closely, but because it closely does still follow the RWS, it was easy for me to interpret and give those answers to them, right? So for that reason, I do highly recommend this one. They loved the artwork too. They were like very, I don't know, they just really were vibing with this one, the Paulina Tarot. And it was just doing its job. It was being good at giving like divination answers because they had a lot of different questions. Some of them were doing things that were not more divination, I guess, based, but some of them were. So this deck really hit that spot. But another one I would recommend, of course, too, because of that same thing, is the Magical Creatures Tarot. This is by, I don't know if it says here. Oh, there we go. This is by Wilder Heart Studios. This was a Kickstarter deck, but you can still get it on their website. I will say this deck is by a Canadian creator. It is a little more pricey if you were in the US or in general, right? I think the prices of this deck went up to get a hold of this. But if you want something that is really good at like giving readings to people, I would also recommend this one. So, oof, did I do this? Okay, there we go. These are the backs. Never mind, it's the other way. That's the only thing. You would think because this deck doesn't seem reversible, I would know which one is what, but you know, sometimes it tricks you. Anyways, this deck is beautiful. These are the backs. And I feel like this deck, more specifically than the other one, is obviously more clearer of an RWS clone. But it also has these cool extra cards that have a lot of great nuance and meaning to them. I think the reason why this deck was really good at traditional divination is because it has this magical sense to it. Obviously, these are magical creatures. Even the extra cards deal with things with common fantasy tropes. They were also RWS, like closely followed, right, the RWS. So it was easy for me to read also. And it was just really interested in digging in there with my coworkers and being honest and direct with them, because they were asking some like really kind of deep questions to this deck, but it was ready to tell them. I also know that this deck is a good recommendation for more divination-like readings, because I have also done readings with this deck for my sister-in-law, and I think it was pretty accurate in helping her out too, because she was also asking like very almost kind of predictive question, like trying to get to the answer of things. And this deck was ready to give that answer, right? I think it helps that these are cutesy, kind of, well, it veers more on the cutesy side of imagery. They're magical creatures. It just seems very mystical, and it really sets the scene. So this is one that I would recommend if you just want to invest in a great, fascinating deck that also makes you do in some way, or makes you in some ways feel like a fortune teller in a way. So yeah, this is the Magical Creatures Tarot, linen cardstock, really cool and nice to shuffle. And yeah, I would just recommend this one when you are really trying to divine for quite a varied audience of people too, right? You can't go wrong with this. There's no nudity in this deck, nothing that's going to confront people in that way. So really good recommendation for divination. Okay. Prompt number 6 of this tag is as above a deck. Oh, wrong one. Wrong deck. But let's still do the as above prompt, right? As above is a deck that connects the reader to cosmic or spiritual realms, right? This one captures it's ideal for, right, like soul work, life path exploration, or messages from the higher self. It speaks to the divine's perspective. I am so sorry. I think I was reading like further down and then I picked up that one. You will see the slow tarot, but for a different rec. So sorry. The deck I actually want to recommend for as above is the Tildwick Tarot. I mean, you guys should not be surprised here. I love the Tildwick Tarot. I've talked about this deck a lot, but a reason why I would put it in the category of as above is because this deck is very spiritual, in my opinion. These are the backs. I have the 10th anniversary edition. This is an indie deck. This one might also be a little more pricey, but I do say this is a very good investment. This is a very great deck. There's a great history with this deck. Just look into it. There's not the space to talk about that right now, but as above, right? I have done a reading with this deck. You know, I have it on my channel, by the way. You can find it. It's called, I think it's like the soul reading. And it was a question, right, where you're asking, what is the soul? How do you make it? All that kind of stuff. And this deck was ready to deliver. It gave me exactly the answers that I don't know, it kind of just blew my mind. So that's why I made it think about it. But also because this deck is so interesting and different. If you can't tell, because again, sorry, the lighting in here is kind of shit for early morning. There are no people in this deck. All the images in this deck are like pretending you are in this manor house. And each scene in the deck is like a manor scene, like little snippets of this place, gardens, etc. Because there's no people in it, I feel like it lets you just get to the soul and heart of the matter. It makes you already feel like you're in another spiritual realm. This is even the Pope, right? It's like an actual statue of a Pope. And so in that way, I just think this is a really good deck for that. It really wants to ask those philosophical, divine kind of questions. And it just lets you really open up and explore, I think, because yeah, you're not encumbered by seeing these images of a bunch of different people. So for as above, this is definitely the deck I recommend, right? I mean, if you are somebody who doesn't think you'll like decks that don't have a lot of people or even that look like this, right? This is the Three of Coins. This might not be for you, but I do think if you are someone who likes the idea of really like exploring these images and diving deep, I do think this could be a really good as above deck for you. So yeah, this is my as above pick, the Tildwick Tarot. Okay, we are on to prompt number 7 now, which is So Below. A deck you recommend for grounded, real-world readings. This one captures everyday emotions, human experience, and earthly wisdom with clarity and that depth. And yes, I would recommend this one. This is the This Might Hurt Tarot. Isabella Rotman. As you can see, I have an indie copy of this deck, but this deck is now mass market, and it's pretty much the same. I just have an indie version personally because I wanted the cardstock to be smaller, which it is in the indie. And it's also matte cardstock, not glossy like not inside editions. What is it? Liminal 11? Yeah, Liminal 11 tends to do. But these are the backs of the indie run. It also had this holographic black edging. But mostly, the reason why I picked this deck as a So Below, because there was a couple of options I kind of weighed going through, is that I feel like this deck shows more real world things, like things that people would recognize in their everyday life, right? It has people that includes everyone. It's very diverse. It shows, like business-like people, whimsy of like dogs and life. Someone doing like yoga or working out, and there's coffee mugs. You see like real world landscapes kind of like littered in. We have motorcycles, but at the same time, it's also just like a good representation of the world around us and the people that live in our world, right? And for that reason, I do recommend this deck for that, right? For being a So Below kind of idea. This deck is also just, it does want to be honest. As the name suggests, at times it might be a hurting message a little bit, but it just wants to get to the truth of the matter, right? It wants you to feel confident that you know what your next steps are in that way. So this is a really good deck in my opinion, especially for like that So Below work, because this is a more modern deck. I think the only reason I personally like it, because again, I don't like completely modern decks, is because it almost has a slightly dystopian feel, or like on the edge of dystopia. I don't know how else to make that make sense. But yeah, I just really think this is a good one. And if you want to do that more grounded, everyday human experience readings, I do recommend this one. And you could read it for basically anybody too, because it would be representative of our world. But yeah, this is for So Below. Okay, prompt number 8 of this tag is a hug deck. This is a deck that offers emotional support and comfort. It's gentle, compassionate, and soothing. And this is a deck that feels like a warm hug from anyone going through a tough time. So, of course, I have to recommend this deck. This is Dirt Gems Oracle. As you can see, I have an indie copy of this deck. This is, I believe, the indie 2nd edition. My copy came to me a little beat up. That's why my box looks like that. But when I think of a hug deck, I have to be honest, this is the ultimate hug deck. And I will explain why. But this is the guidebook that at least the indie run comes with. It has a full black and white color image of the card. And then as you can see here, it has a very long message for each of the cards. And it does this for every single card, right? This is a deck that I do highly recommend using with the guidebook. Just using with the guidebook. It does not matter. Do recommend that. And I will explain why. But these were the backs of the indie 2nd. The cardstock was this like smooth matte lamination, had a okay bend, and the edges were this goldy brass color. Now this deck I also recommend because it is now mass market, which is really, really good. I don't know what the mass market cardstock and all that jazz looks like, but I still recommend this deck because this is the ultimate hug deck. Again, and part of it has to do with the guidebook. So I will give you an example. Let's look here just really quickly at the idea of holy basil, right? This is card number 20. As you can see too, yes, it's set up in a way where you get like an intuitive look at the card, and you get a number and you get the title. It does not have keywords on the actual card itself, but it kind of gives you it when you open up the guidebook. So let's look here at holy basil. So if you're going to look at the guidebook, you get the Latin name, and then you get the romantic, okay? So what it says for holy basil, this is a long thing, but it goes, "Oh, the sparkle, the effervescence, the twinkling starry night of holy basil. What a true and joyful friend, dancing in the night, laughing in the day, bringer of buoyancy and clear and true companionship. Holy basil is a brightener of the spirit, a true harbinger of euphoric peace. The energy of holy basil should be released into our water supply, bringing light into the eyes as a collective, curling up the corners of our mouths and letting all our hearts sing out. Holy basil is a friend if you are feeling backed into a corner by lethargy, despair, hopelessness, or sorrow. Holy basil is an ally for nearly everyone, as their gifts work with the small and large stressors of daily life and both the subtle and the overt. The power of stress has taken on a life of its own in the modern world, so much a standard part of our day-to-day activities. Stress is the mode which many of us view as normal. Stress has always been a part of being alive, but at one time was much more connected to imminent survival than it is now. Now we have culturally programmed this into our existence and invoked the stress response around nearly any activity, relationship, or experience. We have also lost many tools to release stress in the community, to resolve conflicts in a healthy way, and to heal. Holy basil is a glitter sprinkling guide in navigating our stressors by creating strategies to manage them and perhaps even learning a way out of this as a pattern of normalcy. Certainly, some people have much greater loads and are living much more closely to the questions of survival. But if collectively we can brighten, lighten, and loosen the ties to the culture of stress and our stress response, hold each other when needed, allow for freedom and release, these effects can ripple out in a shared society in ways that benefit and brighten us all. So as you can see, very big message, very deep. But again, that's why I would recommend this deck, right? Because that's a message you need. That's a message a lot of us need. It's a very beautiful deck. And I do recommend it with the guidebook and sitting with the messages in the guidebook. As a tool to reflect, to get a hug, to heal from trauma. A lot of the things in here talks about trauma. Stress is definitely a trauma response, right? In holy basil. So yeah, this whole deck is an experience, and you need that guidebook, and I do recommend it. This one definitely helped me through some tough times, and I just love it so much. So if I need to think of a hug deck, I come to this deck to give me exactly the message I need that also will comfort and bring light into the world. So yeah, for a hug deck, I definitely recommend Dirt Gems Oracle. Okay, prompt number 9 of this tag is the Feel Good deck. This is a deck that uplifts, encourages, and energizes, whether through color, artwork, or message. This one is a perfect feel good recommendation for readers who want joy and empowerment. I know this might be an odd choice, maybe for others, but this is a deck I would recommend in that way. This is the Goblins and Gardens Tarot deck. And I think the reason why this deck is always, well, I've talked about this a lot actually on my channel. This is a feel good deck for me. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, okay, a lot of it has to do with the premise, but these are the backs. It also has this like brass gilding. A lot of and this is a collage deck, by the way, that includes florals and then old D&D artwork, like creatures and stuff. And the reason why this is a feel-good deck to me is just because it's the idea that anybody, literally anybody, you could be a literal D&D monster and you can start over. You can start again. You can find joy and plant your garden and have a great time. Because that's kind of what the message of this deck is all about, right? It's fun. It's silly. It's got a lot of just quirky sense of self. But it makes you feel good because it wants to be good. And it even gives you like nice little meanings in between, right? So I definitely recommend this one as a feel good. Like even if I was to, let me kind of explain too. This is, for instance, the Two of Coins. If I go into the little pamphlet guidebook, as you can see, the print is very tiny. Just be aware of that. But if I was going to look at what it says for the Two of Coins, I have here, where is it? Here, okay. It does give you some keywords. So it says like balance, budding, priorities, branching. It said ancient currents wash up at the shore between the toes of the Atomy. The Brussels have sprouted out of the gardens and tumbled down towards damp coastal creeks to celebrate on limestone cliffs. She holds history in her hands, salt and bitterness settle each other. There is a balance beginning. It's not what you're holding, rather it's the connection between that suggests something larger. It is your turn to be a fulcrum in the world. Let us live in trusting everything to this planet together, right? It's just a very good, like feel good message about moving on and enjoying the world around you. And so that's why I kind of recommend this deck. This is also indie. Is it currently in print? I don't know. He does this thing where he like keeps it in print, but then it like he waits in between. So I don't know what the status right now is of this deck, but I do recommend it. Especially when you're entering the summer, spring months. It's just a really good it's a feel good time. So Gardens and Goblins Tarot, definitely recommend, and also has a great shuffle. I don't riffle shuffle, but if you did, this deck would work because, well, I'll show you just a little example. I can't bridge or anything like that, but see, it like really, really is easy to bend. Not for me, but you know, for people who do that kind of thing. So Goblins and Gardens Tarot, this is my feel-good pick. Okay, next up is prompt number 10, which is most versatile. A deck you recommend for handling any type of reading. Love, career, shadow work, daily pulls, and everything in between. It is reliable, it is flexible, and reader-friendly. This is the all-rounder that adapts to every situation. And this might seem an odd choice to some, but I have literally used this deck for every kind of reading, and that's why I would confidently recommend it as a versatile deck. This is the Zerner Farber Tarot. This deck has had a few iterations, as you all might know, But these are the backs of this edition. It is smaller in size, which is good if you have smaller hands. This is mass market. Cardstock's not the greatest, but again, I still love this deck despite that. It has matte gold edges, and it's honestly a very versatile deck. And the reason why I say that too is because Amy Zerner, Monty Farber, they did a few interesting things with this deck, especially in this iteration. As you can see, it kind of has names that would suggest more Thoth leanings, like princess and prince for the courts. But then some of the minors, despite, like, it could be Thoth, but it could also be like Marseille. But then when you look in the guidebook, a lot of the meanings fall more in line with RWS. So this is kind of a strange deck. It kind of just decides, like, fuck everyone, I'm doing my own thing. So it makes it versatile depending on the type of reader that you are, right? You could literally interpret this deck however you want to because that's what they decided to do. They did their own thing with it. And so in that way, it is very versatile. But I think it's also the artwork too. I have also read with this deck for coworkers for a variety of different reasons. And this just worked. And I use this deck for like a bunch of different types of readings. And every time it just works really well. Would I say the images are necessarily the clearest? I think they are if you are more experienced of a tarot reader. So this is definitely a most versatile recommendation. If you are a little bit further along in your journey and you have studied enough, I think this is a good one for that. Would I recommend this as a most versatile if you are a beginner? That's a little more questionable. However, the guidebook for this one is very extensive. So if you were going to learn just the meanings of all the cards and stuff, simply by having the big guidebook that this deck comes with, I would say, yes, this is very versatile and you're going to get a lot of interesting answers and depictions from this. But I personally think this is most versatile. Also, because of the way that this deck is presented, this version of the deck. No borders, right? It just has all these colorful images and stuff. This deck actually goes with a lot of different Oracle decks too. So it's also versatile in the sense of you can pair it with a lot of decks and it probably will not look weird if you have this version. I think if you had ones with any of the older borders, you probably would question if you could really pair it with everything. It doesn't always look good with the borders. So is what it is. But in this version of the deck, I do recommend. Again, I will say, I will be honest, the cardstock is, you can tell it's on the cheaper end for Schiffer, Red Feather, whatever. But again, it also means that if it gets beat up, it's not too hard to get another copy of it. I so far have not needed to, but you know, is what it is. But yeah, Zerner Farber Tarot, I personally find it very versatile. It works for basically every type of reader based on how the cards look and laid out, and also lends itself to a lot of different types of readings. So that is why I personally would recommend it. Okay, now we are on to prompt number 11, which is most inspiring. A deck you recommend to inspire creativity, intuitive flow, or personal transformation. Whether it's the art, the energy, or the depth of the messages, this one sparks something powerful in the reader. This is my personal pick. Now this deck is here. This is the Slow Tarot by Lacey Bryant, okay? And I need to explain about this one. And by the way, I should say, out of all of these prompts, I feel like this prompt is the most subjective because I could have used a lot of different decks that inspired me personally, creatively, right? I could have picked a bunch of different decks that were very intuitive to me specifically. I could have picked a lot of decks that I thought helped in personal transformation to me specifically. So this was a very hard prompt to answer because the truth is I would have recommended a lot of different decks depending on the kind of person you are. But if I have to pick a deck in general that I just think is very inspiring and interesting, I am going to recommend the Slow Tarot. This is another indie deck. This one had a history of going like in and out of print, but it is now currently, I believe, still in print. These are the beautiful backs. And the reason why I think this deck is very inspiring is a lot of it has to do with the really fascinating images inside of it. The artwork on this deck is stunning. You'll see too, it has a lot of real world situations, but then at times it's also very magical. So I didn't want to put this as in the So Below, although it could work as a So Below deck too. But the reason why I put this as most inspiring is because I have said this before. This deck feels like a contemporary fantasy book. Like, it's set in our world, but you can tell there's like some crazy fantastical elements inside of it. Like, there's magic here. It has a lot of deep meanings. You can get a lot of intuitive hits from this deck, and it did inspire something powerful in me when I first got it. Now, again, does that mean it'll be for everybody? No, but this is just one that I think is very inspiring and interesting. Even the really tough deck cards like this one, like the 10 of Swords, it's like, yikes. It does seem like a lot, right? It's very heavy. But at the same time, this deck just feels like a story in of itself. Like, you could really sit with any of the images in this card and come up with something creative out of them. Very interesting and inspiring in that way. The art is just very beautiful, but it is very moving. The readings I have had with this deck have been pretty good and pretty powerful. So for that reason, I would recommend this as an inspiring deck, especially if you are into the arts too. Just like the time and effort it took Lacey to come up with these images in and of itself too is also very amazing. So yeah, this would be my recommendation for an inspiring deck that you could use for personal intuitive hits, also inspire some creativity, and its art is very powerful. So yeah, this is one of my most inspiring decks. Okay, prompt number 12 is best for beginners. This is a deck you'd confidently recommend to someone just starting their tarot journey. It's accessible, it is clear, it's easy to learn with. This one makes tarot feel inviting rather than intimidating. And once again, I am cheating. I have two options, but I will explain both. This little one here is the mini version of the Everyday Witch Tarot. And this one here is by the same creator I already showed, but, this is another Wilder Heart Studios deck. This was the first one, the flagship. This is the Northern Animal Tarot. This is specifically the first printing of the 3rd edition, so it added a different cardstock than you get now, which is just a standard linen. But the reason why I recommend both of these is for different reasons, but I will explain why I think both of these are very beginner-friendly of decks. It's kind of funny how, like, comical, like, this one is so big in comparison to this little one, but these both work for different reasons. Maybe I will start with the little one and then work my way to the big. Anyways, the reason why I think this little Everyday Witch Tarot is really good for beginners. Well, first off, this is the back. It has a slightly witchy vibe. But it is very accessible, clear, and easy to learn with, especially if you pair it with the guidebook. Now, because I bought the mini, it did not come with a guidebook, right? But I have a PDF of this guidebook, and I think it's really good for beginners to learn on. It still follows closely the RWS. You see real people in it, but it's also witchy at the same time. It's very fun and light. The colors are bright. Nothing in here is too scary or intimidating, in my opinion. So this is one that I do think is very beginner-friendly of a deck to have, right? I think this is a good one. This is a good option. I, again, only have the mini personally because I like the mini cardstock of Llewellyn. I've already talked about this. The regular decks, the big cardstock is not good these days. I don't know why they switched to that one. I have no idea. But anyways, yeah, because this is closer to following the RWS and has really intuitive, clear meanings, in my opinion, and has a good guidebook on top of that, that really helps in learning the cards. I think this is a really good one for beginners. Of course, if you get the bigger size and you are not a cardstock snob and all that jazz, I think you will have a good time with this deck. But the reason why I would also recommend the other one, right? Like, why would I recommend the Northern Animal Tarot? Is because if you don't know, this deck is an RWS clone, very closely, right? But the reason why I think it's good for beginners, especially if you want to invest, because, by the way, this is, again, just like the other Magical Creature Tarot, this deck is a little more pricier nowadays because it does ship from Canada and because just great production quality. Also has a lot of extra cards that act like oracles, so you can get really deep, interesting meanings. You get more bang for your buck for being, because I think this deck has like over 100 cards. But yeah, you get more bang for your buck as a beginner. But it's also an RWS clone, right? So because it is a clone, it has a lot of easy to read messages, right? Especially if you are learning the RWS, but you don't want an actual RWS, like beginning RWS, because let's be honest, a lot of that artwork, the coloring is not for everybody. Some of the depictions are kind of like meh to most people. And I think this is a good beginner deck too, because this is animals, right? Most people are not going to be put off by images of animals. They're just not. Like, even if you are not someone who thinks you like animal decks, right? Because this is also, I feel like you would have to like this deck if you like animal decks, right? But if you got a reading with this deck, you would not really be as put off by it because it's very friendly, beautiful coloring, feels kind of storybook-like, and it's just a good one, right? It's very calm. I've read this with this deck for other people too, and they've gotten great messages. But yes, because it is a clone, it is easier to learn with. It does have a little guidebook. I can show you. It's not like the most extensive, because if you are a beginner, you kind of want decks that are like more extensive. But it does still give you a good job of, like, for instance, this death card, right? It gives you like idea of the image that's going on in the card, and then it like gives you the message, and it's still a pretty good way. This is little, but it'll help you start off on your journey. And if you, again, you have been looking at resources online or have a different book on top of this, I think it works, to be honest. So that's why I would recommend this one. This is, I don't know, her decks are really good. And I think because they are more RWS clone related, it's just easier to work with too. I think I even have, or maybe I have an imperfect edition. I don't remember. I might have an imperfect third, but it was like one of the early ones. I have no idea. So this cardstock, it's not normally this big. Now this deck is in linen. I had one of the first ones. It was like on this like eco, I don't know if you guys can tell. It has like a slight texture and coating, but it makes it so that it's more waterproof. So I have like a waterproof version of this deck. But anyways, I still recommend this for beginners because of how easy it is, how nice it is, and how non-confronting it is. So this is a potential other option if you wanted to go indie and you wanted a good investment, great investment, right? This is more an investment deck because it's more expensive. So this is the Northern Animal Tarot 3rd edition. Okay, this next prompt is prompt number 13, which says best for professionals. This is a deck you suggest for experienced readers who need depth, nuance, and strong symbolism, ideal for layered reading, spiritual insight, and working with clients at a professional level. This might seem like an odd choice. I have 3 decks here. I don't care that I'm cheating. Again, this depends on where you're at and how you read for other people, right? Because professional sense. I have 3 recommendations. The first one is the Monsoon Tarot indie deck. Actually, all these are indie, I should say. This is the Monsoon Tarot. This is the Guided Hand Tarot, and this is the Peculiar Pathways Tarot. And I'm going to try to quickly explain why I think all three of these are good on a more professional level. We will start, though, with Monsoon. I love this deck. This is a Vermilion deck, Woe Studios. These are the backs. It is on a linen cardstock, very easy to read with. And the reason why I think this is a good deck for more professionals is because if you cannot tell by this imagery, this deck is very deep. This deck is very interesting. It is very different. It does its own thing. I would say it still follows the RWS meanings, but it decides to go its own complete different direction. And so that's why you do need to know about tarot card meanings. I think before using this deck, I would definitely say it is not a beginner deck because of that, right? You need to have some basis of knowledge before you get into this deck. But I think it's really good for professional readings because there is a lot you can go off of from the imagery. A lot of deep intuitive hits you can get, a lot of nuance, and it still has elemental associations. So if you are someone who reads very elementally like I do, you're going to have an easy time with this deck. If you are also good at intuition, right? This is a deck that has a lot of knowledge and depth. It's very fantastical, very dreamlike, but you really need to you need to have some of that info, like skill in there to read with this deck, in my opinion. But I do think this is a good one, and I have done really interesting and great in-depth readings with this one. So this is one that I feel like someone who is more professional and could read with anything could probably sink their teeth into. So that's why I say Monsoon is one. For Guided Hand Tarot, a reason why I would recommend this deck for professionals is one, if you like collage-based decks. These are the backs of this one. A reason why I recommend this deck for professionals because it is very spiritually and intuitively geared also. It's one of the older collage decks, but it also does interesting things with the artwork. You can get really beautiful readings out of this deck, spiritual insight. It's very smartly done. The images have a lot that they can speak of. And you can really storytell, I think, with this deck because of the images. Like even this chariot, you can go off on a whole tangent about the chariot, about what you're seeing here with the 10. Oh no, this is the 9. The 9 and the 2. Just the way that it's done, there's a lot that you could really dive deep into if you were going to give a reading professionally for somebody else. So in my opinion, I think this is a good one, especially also if you like collage decks, but you don't want something that's too busy, right? Because if someone's getting a reading, you kind of want the images to be more simple in their way to interpret, but still have a lot of impact, like this Fool, right? So that's why I would also recommend the Guided Hand Tarot as one that's probably more geared more towards professionals, but it still falls to RWS. Like it's still set up in a way that it's not completely unidentifiable, right? So this is also why I'd recommend this one. And finally, I would say the Peculiar Pathways Tarot is also a good one for professionals because it does closely follow the RWS. It also has this great guidebook where you can get even more in-depth knowledge about like how it pulled from the traditional, right? You see the images here and you see the same on this side, what it took from the original RWS. It gives a lot of knowledge in here. So because of that too, if we look at the actual deck, these are the backs. Beautiful edging. It's like a sage kind of green color. This deck follows more closely the RWS. So I think this could be good for professionals also, if you don't, again, want to use the actual RWS, but you still have all the same rich symbolism in this deck, right? That's why I said strong symbolism. This is a big reason why I would also recommend this one for professionals, is because you can still get a lot of those intuitive hits and nuanced meanings from the traditional RWS. It's just presented in a different way that is also more collage, digital collage together. But it's still powerful and has a lot of nuance and clarity. People would also be amazed by the artwork. They don't have to get too bogged down. There's no people in this either, so it's also easier in that way to not like have to assume any which way. I feel like some decks that have a lot of people in them make it harder to, what's the word? Like you might get bogged down more in people's facial expressions and take that more literally, whereas if you just have something with more images, you just get more to the message and to the point. So I think this could also be a really good one for more experienced readers who do have that deep understanding of the RWS, but want something a little different. So yeah. This is the Peculiar Pathways Tarot, and now we are going to move on to the last two prompts because this video is already way too long. Wow, it's been a while since I've done this long, so give me 1 second. Okay, this next prompt will be very self-explanatory. This is prompt number 14, which is Witchy Vibes, a deck you'd recommend for those who love witchy aesthetics, moody vibes, and magical symbolism or spell work support, casting, altar work, etc. Very obvious choice. Seasons of the Witch Mabon. But I do highly recommend this one. This is such a good deck. These are the backs, very witchy. Edges, very witchy. And these are the images. This is such a good deck. I think out of all the Seasons of the Witch decks, I mean, I only have 3 of them, but out of all the ones I have, this is still the favorite for me. This is the most witchy. This is the most potent. It has a lot of stuff in the guidebook around spell work. Again, a very obvious choice. This should not surprise anybody. I've talked about this deck a lot. I've had it for a couple years now. Really like this one, right? Very witchy. The messages are really good in this. So this is an obvious one that I would recommend. And in that way, I guess I don't... So this is prompt number 14. Technically, this also has a prompt number 15. For prompt number 15, I'm just going to give it a quick honorable mention, but I wouldn't actually put it as like a full recommendation. So technically, I didn't really do this prompt. Prompt number 15 is astrology work. I'll be straight up honest. I don't really do astrology work. I don't know enough about astrology to go into astrology work. And to be honest, I don't even have an astrology-based deck. I don't. However, this is an honorable mention. This is the Zodiac Tarot deck and booklet. This is a tin version, as you can see. And the reason why I'm just going to quickly say this is an honorable mention for astrology work, because this is not, as you can see, an actual astrology-based deck. But every card in this deck, or I think most of them, do have astrological meanings in them, right? It gives you hints to what they were talking about in astrology. I think if you read more of the guidebook, it goes more into it. But this deck does have good astrology. And the reason why I also want to put it as an honorable mention is because I have somebody in one of my tarot groups who, when I brought this to the group and I was like reading with this deck, he was like, wow, I love how it has the astrological meanings and they're very exact. And I was like, really? I was like, yeah. This is actually good when you're learning the astrology of each of the tarot cards. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know enough of astrology to go too in depth in that, but I guess it follows it pretty exactly. So if you want a deck that can be a good supplement, maybe this could be your option. I'm not going to say it as a strong recommendation. I've already talked about this before. This cardstock drives me up the wall. It is high gloss. It is kind of sticky feeling. Your fingerprints will be left in it. It's not the greatest, okay? But I ended up really liking this deck despite all that, just because, I don't know, it reads really well. So in that way, I recommend it as a cool deck, but it's just an honorable mention for astrology. But anyways, those are all my recommendations. This video was way too long. I need to get out of here because even I am tired of filming it. It took me a while. I was really thinking about these prompts, but I hope you guys got a lot of interesting deck recommendations. So yeah, I'm going to head out now, and I'll see you guys all again next time. Bye.